Welcome back into KSL News Radio and KSL Sports. Mitch Harper here. BYU football getting ready for Week 3 against a familiar program, a rival, the Wyoming Cowboys. And to break down the Pokes, no one better to cover Wyoming football and give insight into the Cowboys. Cody Tucker, longtime friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time. He's the publisher of 7220sports.com. And founder. He's also the host of the Kickoff Show on KOWB leading up to Wyoming football broadcast. Cody, good to chat with you, man. We hung out at Mountain West Media Days, and it got me excited for this matchup. I'm looking forward to this chat.
Absolutely, Mitch. I appreciate you having me on, and it's hilarious. I tell my friends how we met as little punks on MySpace, talking smack back and forth about this very rivalry. So it's just hilarious to me that we're in this spot we're in now.
It is crazy, and if you think about that, it's about 20 years ago, and I heard you on your radio show talking about how the Wyoming 2004 team was being honored. They beat UCLA in the Vegas Bowl. And I remember that game vividly because back in the day, always following everything about the Mountain West teams and how things have changed so much in college football, and one for our lives, but then also just college football at large. It's kind of surreal how things have changed. But I think one thing that hasn't changed is the hatred of BYU from Wyoming faithful. Is that still fair?
That's very, very fair, and it's unfortunate, Mitch, that this matchup's lost a little luster because of the Cowboys' rough start. But don't get it twisted, man. Everybody had this this day circled, this game circled. It's going to be a sellout. Wyoming fans have not forgotten BYU. I don't know if BYU fans have forgotten Wyoming, but the feeling is not mutual.
What has created that? Is it just simply that when BYU had success, or what's created the hatred of BYU? I'm sure we could go on for multiple editions of this interviews in the show, but just maybe a few things that you feel are the pillars of the hatred. You think?
Yeah, I think it's different by generations. You talk to Wyoming players that played in the early '60s, and they would tell you that BYU wasn't even a rival. They weren't good. It wasn't even a tough game. It was just a quick beat down in Provo. And then you worried about other teams like Colorado State and Utah State, New Mexico, Utah. And then all of a sudden, you talk to the following generation, and it's the Black 14 and everything that went on there where, the 14 black players were kicked off Wyoming's team. And because they wanted to protest BYU and some racial policies of the Mormon Church. And then I think what really sparked it, Mitch, is the fact that BYU got really good and Wyoming couldn't recruit a black player all of a sudden. And Wyoming was the team that was playing in the Sugar Bowl back in those days. Then all of a sudden BYU's good. And Lavelle Edwards, my generation, then it's Lavelle Edwards, and then it's just pissed off because BYU's really good. And, you and I talked at Mountain West Media Days about the quarterback situation there. BYU's had a good quarterback my entire life, and I'm 41 years old today. And I have never lived a day on this earth where BYU has not had a solid or unbelievable quarterback. So, the winning. And then, of course, it's the Wyoming and Utah are just polar opposite type of states in a lot of regards. Here it's, beer drinking, ranching, tough, and there, we think of it as choir boy stuff and no cussing, no drinking, no nothing. So it's a lot different. And it's just always been that way. And I think, you can even get down to the blue and white pretty uniforms that are so Yankee-ish, in my opinion, where it's just, I don't know, man. It's a lot of animosity. But honestly, I can speak for myself that winning has been, BYU's winning has been something that I have not enjoyed in my lifetime. And, it's funny. I always tell people, Mitch, that growing up, like about 99.9% of the people listening to your show right now, I was not necessarily allowed to cuss growing up, but as long as that cuss word was followed by BYU or Colorado State, it was okay in my house.
Well, that's a great insight. I really appreciate that. And I think it's going to be fun to have this matchup. I will say, like Craig Bowl 2 years ago, I didn't think that, I thought BYU would probably cancel this game once they had the moment they go to the Big 12. But Tom Holmoe wanted to keep it, and it's here, and it's going to be a striped-out stadium in War Memorial, sold-out crowd. But Wyoming, as you noted, comes in with some struggles, 0-2, and this is, and I think for Cougar fans listening to this, if they haven't been paying attention, Wyoming was very successful these last 7-8 years under Craig Bohl, consistently going to bowl games. Last year they won 9 games. So this is completely different than what you guys have been experiencing the past decade.
Yeah, no question. And to your earlier point, I want to say, big ups to BYU's administration for keeping this game. It's awesome to see. I thought for sure it wasn't going to happen. And I think another thing that's making this game so exciting for everybody, Mitch, is the fact that I think we're all into the understanding that, we might not ever see BYU in Laramie, Wyoming ever again. Yep. So it's a pretty special moment. But yeah, really, really rough start for the Cowboys, really uncharacteristic things that are bringing this team down right now. Under Craig Bohl, you're right. I mean, it was perennial winning, went to 6 bowl games in his 10 years, and, obviously not counting the COVID year, but and he had a mess to clean up when he got here, of course. But it's been really bizarre these first 2 games. I'm talking 16 penalties. That's just not a staple of anything a Craig Bohl team ever did. A lot of bonehead mistakes. I mean, and it's the little ones that you might not even notice, Mitch. Like last week, they don't get the punter out quick enough to get a punt off, so Idaho fields it before the new 2-minute warning, and essentially the Cowboys lost a timeout, and they lost a lot of seconds off the clock when they're trying to come back. And that might not be a big thing to some people, but I mean, it's huge. Little things like that are huge. They have to blow a timeout because they only have 10 men in on a field goal. And it's just, I know it's a new staff. It's a new head coach, a first-time head coach at any level in Jay Sawvell. So there's going to be some growing pains, but I think, Evan Svoboda's had a really rough go of things. The junior quarterback out of Mesa, Arizona, who spent a year at Snow College there in Utah. He's had a really rough go of it. And it's hard because we should be saying, Evan Svoboda's that was only his 3rd career start, right? I mean, that's what we should be saying. We should be saying, Jay Sawvell's this is only going to be his 3rd game he's ever been a head coach in. But when you have a 9-win team and you have 18 returning starters back, and you say in your introductory press conference that I'm just here to grab the baton and finish the race that Bohl started, starting this way where you're not competitive in Tempe and where you lose to an FCS school at home, and now you've got a rival on deck, it's just not the ideal start here in Laramie.
Is there any chance that there could be the backup quarterback gets inserted in? I know that Svoboda was, Sawvell had some bold, commentary about Evan in week 2 in his press conference, where he's going to be a really good quarterback here eventually. Yeah. I mean, is there any change? There chance there could be a change at quarterback?
Boy, I think things would have to be going sideways pretty good, Mitch, because, you think about that too. I mean, you give up on the kid, you're likely killing his career, his confidence, the whole shebang in one shot. So, the coaching staff, they're the ones who are thinking, hey man, this will be his 4th career start. I think we all got a little spoiled's not the right word, but we watched Evan Svoboda go in and start a game in front of 100,000 people last year in Austin, Texas. And that was a 10-10 game going into the 4th quarter. He really handled things. He was really poised. He made some nice plays. And that kind of made you think, okay, this kid's going to be really good once he gets the reins. And that just hasn't been the case so far. And you can point to wide receivers that are very young and inexperienced, guys not getting open downfield. And another thing that hasn't been a Craig Bohl staple is, the offensive line has been shaky so far. So how it goes. A quarterback, they get all the love, but they also get all the blame, and it has been a really tough start. But it's a slippery slope, in my opinion, Mitch. If you're going to pull Evan Svoboda, things have got to be going sideways so badly, and the score has to be really lopsided, in my opinion, or you're going to crush the kid's confidence, and then you've basically given up on him.
Watching this summer his performance against Texas, I came away being impressed too. And I saw BYU play Texas last year, and they couldn't do anything. And they only scored 2 field goals in that game against that playoff-bound Texas team. And, yeah, Svoboda was much better than Keaton Slovis in Austin. So it has been a little bit surprising to see these struggles so far. What is the strength of this Wyoming team, though, right now through 2 weeks, you think, Cody?
Boy, that's a great question, Mitch. It's hard to say, but I would say the defense definitely took a step against Idaho. But I mean, it's so hard to tell when you're. And don't get me wrong, I'm not dumping on Idaho. That's a really good team with especially defense.
Yeah.
But it's kind of hard to gauge, right, how good a team is when you're playing an FCS squad. And Also, Jay Savell admitted as much. Idaho went conservative. They were trying to milk the clock in the second half and trying to get out of there with a win and take as much clock as possible. And that's what they did. The Cowboys did hold them off the scoreboard, and they got more pressure on the quarterback. But the positives have been hard to come by. And to put it in perspective for your listeners, after the first game at Tempe, which was it was hideous from the second play of the game when Evan Svoboda threw a pick six. When asked that very question after the game, Jay Savell said, well, the punter had a good night. You never want to hear that. And he didn't even have a good night necessarily because he kicked it the wrong way on one attempt, and a horse collar had to bring down the ball carrier. So it's been really, really tough so far. And I would say the strength of this team is the defense and the offensive line, but they got to prove it.
So is this then a game where all the wrongs could be righted, if you will, if they perform well against BYU?
Oh, there couldn't be a better opponent in a lot of ways. I mean, in some ways, there couldn't be a better opponent, but in other ways, man, that talk about really getting buried. You lose 3 in a row. You're not competitive against a rival that you're never going to see in this town again. That's not a good recipe either. But what we heard yesterday over there at the football building was, they couldn't have asked for a better opponent to be playing right now, and they know the fans are jazzed, and it stinks, Mitch. It really does. There was so much. Everybody was talking about this game, and now, unfortunately, the narrative and the tone has turned to, oh my God,
yeah,
I can't stand watching another loss to BYU in my lifetime.
Well, and seeing around the Mountain West Conference this year, it feels like I know Boise's had some early season success with they played well at Oregon and had that win at Georgia Southern, but it felt like there could be a case where Wyoming is right there for the Mountain West title. And in this world of the 12-team playoff, when we were bantering back and forth about BYU and Wyoming in kind of the heyday, I guess you could say, or not heyday, but in the Mountain West, it's like there's like a path now to playing at the highest stages, so it's kind of like a missed opportunity to start the season out like this.
No doubt. And I thought in Vegas it was insane that the Cowboys were picked to finish 6th. I really did, because they have a lot of guys coming back in all the right places. And like we talked about, Evan's performance in Austin, not to mention he came in the bowl game on the final drive and led the Cowboys to the win over Toledo in the Arizona Bowl. You just thought, man, the future is really bright. You're also hearing outgoing quarterback Andrew Peasley saying things like, man, Evan's really special. I've seen 3 quarterbacks in my lifetime that can spin it like Evan. And, Evan's the third one, but the other 2 are Jordan Love, a guy he backed up there in Logan, and a guy who used to be under center here named Josh Allen. So when you're putting a guy in that kind of rarefied air, it gets people excited, and it's just been a dud so far. It's been really, really bad so far.
Evan took on the number 17 to be Josh Allen. I mean, was that kind of the thought by wearing that number?
Yeah. He didn't hide from it, man. He said that's why he came to Wyoming in the first place. Is he saw what Josh Allen carved out for himself, being a virtual nobody. Evan was really hurt in recruiting because of COVID. That was his senior year down in Mesa at Red Mountain High School. So he decided no D1 offers came. He decided to go to Snow for a year, but he always had Wyoming on his mind and always wanted to be here. So I love that. I love the confidence. If you look at him, he's bigger than Josh Allen. He looks the part, man. He really does. I believe Jay Savell said he looked like he was sculpted like a Greek god, and he really is. And he's very athletic as well. He can run. It's really hard to bring him down. Obviously, it's 6'5", 245 pounds. But so far, man, he has not looked comfortable, in my opinion. He's looked very much like that statue that Savell referred to, standing in the pocket. And I brought it up yesterday that, his head coaches in an interview told me he was most successful rolling out of the pocket and getting involved in the run game. And that's just, he had a 37-yard run on the second play from scrimmage against Idaho, and then we really didn't see it after that. So in my opinion, that's what they need to do. They need to get him moving, especially against a big, strong, fast, old BYU defense.
It is an interesting quarterback matchup between BYU and Wyoming, because BYU also has a JUCO quarterback in Jake Retzlaff, who his recruitment was hurt by COVID out in California, had no football being played out there out in the West Coast, and goes to a JUCO. Then he ends up at UTEP, goes back to another JUCO, and then ends up at BYU. Jake's kind of under fire a little bit. BYU fans are wanting to see Gary Bohannon after what transpired in Dallas after 3 turnovers, but Jake has given moments of hope in that Week 1 performance against Southern Illinois, but this is not, this is not the heydays of 1996 WAC championship when the two teams are just high-flying offenses. We're not seeing that on Saturday, I don't think, Cody.
No, this isn't Josh Walworth versus Steve Sarkisian. That's for darn sure. But that's the thing. I mean, you guys are seeing some positives. Wyoming fans haven't seen many positives. Yep. There's been a lot of overthrows, underthrows. He really hasn't been on target much. He got sacked, I want to say 5 times against Idaho. Threw the pick 6, threw another pick against Arizona State. It has not been a great start for Evan Svoboda, and his supporting cast hasn't been great either. So I'm extremely curious, Mitch, to see what the game plan is this week. I thought last time they played in Provo in 2022, they ran it down BYU's throat the first half and then got away from it, and I never understood that. So I'm thinking a heavy dose of that. But, another thing is the Cowboys have been without Harrison Whaley, and he's a special back. He's a guy who took it 65 yards and absolutely dusted the Longhorns secondary last year in Austin. And then John Michael Gillenborg, a guy that I feel very strongly in saying he's going to play on Sundays. And he might play Saturday, but he hasn't played yet either. So that certainly hasn't helped.
It's going to be a fun matchup. 7 p.m. kickoff on Saturday night, CBS Sports Network. You can listen to the call on KSL News Radio, the BYU call, of course. And I got to ask you, Cody, what is your favorite memory of BYU Wyoming games of the past? And yes, you can pick a Wyoming win. Our listeners won't be offended. They're expecting that. But what is your favorite BYU Wyoming memory?
Well, it's gross saying it. There hasn't been many wins in my lifetime. 88, I was only 5 years old. That's one everybody points to. It was the first night game ever in War Memorial Stadium. And Ty Detmer got in that game late. And I believe the Cowboys finished that night with 8 or 9 sacks. And I obviously was too little for that one. But if I could point at one, I would say probably 2003. That was Joe Glenn's, Joe Glenn turning things around his first year in Laramie. They won 13-10, I believe. They tore down the field goal post, took them. They're still part of the field goal post hanging in the bar in downtown Laramie right now. But,
oh, really?
Yeah, that one was pretty special. But also in, I believe, 1999, the Cowboys got him at night with David Dimmel in a night game there in Laramie. But I've been to probably 7, 8, 9 games in Provo, and I have never left happy one time. So it's been a lopsided rivalry. I wish we could say we all miss you guys a lot. We don't, but really excited for this game. And also, your buddies up in Salt Lake City are coming to Laramie next year. So this might be the last 2 times we get to see the Cougars and Utes in Laramie. And, whatever happens, we're looking forward to it. We're glad these games weren't canceled. Thankful that they're gonna take place, especially here in Laramie.
You bring up the 99 game. For some reason, I instantly think of just like a bunch of reverses from Wyoming. I don't know. What was it they were running? Because I just remember BYU was like 8-1 in that game and had maybe some BCS hopes. And then Wyoming, I just remember a bunch of reverses for some reason. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, Manny Matstagas ran that triple shoot attack.
That's right.
A lot of that, and you know what I think of first is hideous baby bib uniforms on the BYU Cougars. That's what I think of.
Yes, for me, I would probably say the 96 one obviously is up there for BYU fans. That's a game that a lot of Cougar fans went to that one. That was, and I think people don't realize too that 96 game, that was the beginning of conference championship games, and BYU Wyoming was the highest rated game on TV that day with the SEC. The Big Ten didn't have one back then, but I'm trying to think of the other. Big 12 had a game, and it was BYU Wyoming was the highest rated game. And it kind of felt like that was a moment in college football where all the leagues started to then pick up conference championship games. It was really a trendsetter ahead of its time. I also thought the Poinsettia Bowl, it was a nasty game with weather, but BYU grinded it out with Jamal Williams. That was one that was a good game as well. But, yeah, it's – go ahead.
96, I remember, I was at that game as a young kid, and I remember it being pretty much split right down the pipe, Wyoming BYU fans in Sam Boyd Stadium. And, of course, we had all the beer guys on our side. But it was that was a heartbreaker. I was young enough. I was like 12 years old, and I remember being in the parking lot crying like a little girl, and a BYU fan came by and talked smack to me, and he hit the trailer hitch of a truck and, went head over heels. So that made me feel good for about a second. But that was a heartbreaker because if you remember, Mitch, Wyoming was 10-2,
Yep.
their second loss being to that BYU team with Chad Lewis and Sarkisian, and Wyoming didn't get a bowl invite.
Yeah.
Utah instead got a bowl invite with 4 or 5 losses that year. They went to the Copper Bowl.
Yeah, I remember that. That was one of the downsides of BYU winning the game was that Utah went to a bowl game and Wyoming did it with Marcus Harris, and he was a Bolitnikoff winner. It was a great Wyoming team, and it is a shame to think that there's been times where Wyoming has not gotten a chance to play in the postseason. Even I think Wonder Bowl, they had a 6-6 year and they didn't go bowling a couple years back. It feels like, or maybe 7 years.
Dana Dimmel won 8 games twice and they didn't go to a bowl. So it was a lot harder obviously back then, which was kind of nicer in a way, but here we are complaining about a 6-6 team not going to a bowl game. It's pretty sick, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no, but I'm going to look forward to Saturday night. It's going to be fun, and to see BYU and Wyoming square off probably for the last time coming up on Saturday night. Cody, always appreciate it. And again, follow Cody's work at 7220sports.com, founder, publisher. Also listen to his kickoff show coming up on Saturday on KOWB in Laramie. If you're going to be going to the BYU game out there, listen to him. So, Cody, appreciate the time, and keep in touch, man.
Appreciate you, Mitch. Looking forward to seeing you out here, buddy.